And I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to have William take it away.
All right, all right, all right. So this is nice. Dinner time, good to go. So this is a little interesting, right? Because we're in the middle of a dinner time and it's a pandemic and it's virtual and it's an asynchronous session. So this kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. I recorded a video because that's the obsessive person that I am. Feel free to watch it. I am not going to play my own video on the screen. That makes me feel really squishy inside. Instead, what this session is it is something that I had a conversation with my administrator and my director of counseling at the beginning of this school year. I love digital citizenship. It's kind of been a thing that I've been all about since I became an ITC. I think it comes from my background as a special education teacher, because as a special education teacher, I realized that it didn't matter how good my lessons were. If I didn't have the buy-in from students, if students didn't feel safe to be with me, if students didn't feel like they had a sense of belonging, then it really didn't matter what I got myself over in the screen, but that's okay. Seeing myself is weird. Sorry. It really didn't matter what my lesson was if I didn't have the buy-in. So with that, I started at the beginning of this school year. I did this thing. We do this thing at Colgan High School called Shock and Awe, and I'm going to just kind of give you a quick overview of that. This is much less me chatting and much more me just kind of wanting to start a conversation with you and then letting it go from there. So, all right. So can everybody see the screen? Yes? Shake heads? Yes? Amazing. Great. So we do this thing called Shock and Awe. We talk about it at our school with the idea that we all became educators for a reason. Like we could have made more money in the industry. We became the educators of our content. So for example, I was a language arts teacher and a special ed teacher because I love writing and I love the power of voice. And so my principal would always say at the beginning of the year, throw everything else out the window. There will always be time to work on the SOL or to work on the AP exam. But for 1 week, I want kids to go home and be excited about learning. And so we were running Shock and Awe, and I asked if I could take it over. And so it really hinged around 5 main concepts. The concepts of maximizing our time with our students. I like to do numbers for giggles, but let's just take in Prince William County and the way in which our bell schedule works. The average time that we're going to have with our kids, like actual Zoom time or in-person time, is going to be about 50 hours. At a high school level, it's normally about 120. At the elementary level, it's normally about 300. And so this was our day one challenge. Our day one challenge was, can you find 5 minutes a week in which you spend one-on-one with kids? And that was hard because they were like, oh yeah, that's easy. And then when they thought about it, it's really not. Because when you have 30 kids in your classroom and you dedicate 5 minutes to every child, it's a lot, and you don't have a lot of time for other content. And it's even more when you teach, say, 5 or 6 sections. And so we talked about that. Our second thing was connecting with this generation. This generation is that once in a century kind of generation, 7-second attention spans, 1 million minutes behind a screen. They struggle to build real in-depth relationships, and their whole life is streamed online. So we talked about how you can understand, how you can listen, and how you can empathize with your students. On day 3, we talked about conversations, about how it's all about building a conversation and it's not about lecturing. So how can you build a conversation with your students, and how can you be less of me, the focus, especially in a hybrid or virtual setting, and be more about having that conversation that continues to go with students. Day 4 was about purposeful on-demand learning. Technology, not just for the sake of technology, but because it had a value. And the one thing that I really wanted teachers to understand, and I want anybody that's listening today to understand, is that I feel in 2020 it's obvious, but it was like that before. We don't teach 5 sections. We're not a 3rd grade teacher. I'm not a language arts teacher. I'm really a teacher of 150 individual kids, because this is hard to take, but the world and kids today don't need us for information. I'm a dad of a 14 and a 16-year-old, and my daughters, both of them, feel like they know all of the answers because they can find it on Google, or it was on Twitter, or they watched this video on TikTok. And it really struggled for me because I wanted to knock those sources of information. But instead, I realized my kids need me for an interpretation. They don't need me to give them the information anymore, especially once they reach, say, third or fourth or fifth grade. What they really need is us to have a conversation and an interpretation. And then we ended with boundaries. I think the hard thing with our students today is that they feel that if, and I'm sure you've witnessed this, when a student messages you and you don't reply, they immediately interpret that as bullying. And so that's really hard to establish these boundaries and these norms in which, if as a teacher I'm not going to send an assignment at 10 p.m., then I want my students to respect my on and off times. And it really built around building this community. So with all that, I'm going to stop sharing and share something else in the chat. And let's see if we go back to share again. And yeah, we'll go to that screen. That's fine. So I'm going to put this in the chat. It's just a Padlet I made. Like I said, this is an asynchronous session, so it feels kind of weird to me. Some of you are here, which is amazing. And some of you will watch later, which is amazing too. So with that, this is a Padlet I made. What I would love to hear of the people who are watching, what are some ideas that you're doing with your students, the ideas that you're doing with your teachers so that they could have maximize 5 minutes of time with them? What are some ideas that you're doing, some conversations that you're having to understand this generation of students and the way they communicate? What are some ways that you're building relationships? And how are you maintaining a school-life balance? And then why does technology matter? And for giggles, if you want fun things, you can watch me. That's awkward. Let's not watch me. I give this presentation, a version of this presentation, to different areas in the school district. And one of the things I do is I talk about the basics of this, but we talk about, if you're looking to do a digital citizenship talk with your teachers or with your students or with your families, I break down 5 different individual talks. Let me get past all these little words. 5 different talks for teachers, 5 different talks for your parents, and then 5 different talks for students. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing things in the chat. Anybody want to unmute and talk? How is digital citizenship? How is it going with building connections with students? Anybody? I'm about to just make you all able to unmute yourselves. Ideas? Thoughts? This is the awkwardness in the part.
Let's see, I might have just misclicked something there for us, William. You know what? Let's just do that. We are a small enough group.
We're a small enough group, 24. I got you.
You guys can unmute yourself, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. You got the power.
Well, I'll go, Billy.
Thank you.
It's Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. Well, I mean, coming from the elementary background, I think one of the big things staff is doing is lunch bunches. You know, and then allowing kids to just talk. I think they're missing that social interaction, you know, especially our little ones, those first and second graders. So they're not necessarily all about the TikTok and stuff yet,
Right.
but they are craving those social interactions and those times to see their friends. We had a celebration one day, probably about a week ago, and we had a whole plan of what we were going to do. And we ended up nixing it and pivoting right during the celebration because we could tell they just wanted to see their friends and they wanted to talk with their friends. So there were enough adults. We put them in breakout rooms and we just let them chat and catch up with people that they don't normally get to see anymore because there's no recess, there's no hallway, there's no, you know, there's none of that. So just the simple thing of giving kids opportunities to see each other and chat with each other from different grades, from different classrooms, because they were craving that desire for social interaction.
I love that. So, how is that transferring to the academic part of the classroom? So that's like the lunch bunches. So is that like almost like a brain break in the middle?
Yeah, yeah. Our lunch bunch is like because of the whole virtual thing, it's like right smack in the middle of the day, 12 to 1. So it's lunch, it's recess kind of all combined for those virtual kiddos. And then it's transferring over content based because they get that opportunity to talk, they have those moments, and then they're refocused, and they know that, oh, if I do this, this is what happens. So hey, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get my stuff done. It might even be, hey, I'm going to turn on my camera and work, because I know if I do, I get to celebrate, and this is what's going to happen when we celebrate. And it just gives them something to work towards and something to look forward to.
Yeah, 100%. Anybody ideas of how your teachers are finding that one-on-one time that, like in person, we would have pulled kids to to our desk or talked to them outside. Is there any ideas, the things that your teachers are doing or you're doing that is allowing you to have that one-on-one time with students? Anybody? Hmm.
I'll chat again, just because I'm in so many rooms in my role. Our teachers are using breakout rooms, so
Yeah.
especially in those small moment times when they only have a group of 6 kids, 7 kids, they'll have their kids in different breakout rooms and pull one kid in a breakout room at a time. Just a quick check-in, see how they're doing, and then they go back. Or even putting kids in a waiting room and having them wait, and just checking in with kids, talking to them about a book that they've read, or talking to them about how this particular activity went, or they know that they're working with me now and doing some tech stuff. How did that go with Mrs. Katz? How did you like it? Just, they're not so much doing it in those whole group moments, but definitely during those small group moments, pulling kids into breakout rooms and finding some time during those times has helped, I think.
Yeah.
I was going to chime in. I couldn't get my mic unmuted, and it didn't unmute on its own. Anyway, at the high school level, our teachers are using the breakout rooms as well, and also the jam boards with their students, and the check-ins, and sometimes a personal email to the students to see where they are and how they're doing. So they are adding that little personal touch. Like I missed you yesterday. Wanted to see if there was anything I could do. So I know at my school, we have a list of students that we like to check in on to make sure that they're doing okay, whether it's because they haven't been showing up in the virtual environment, or something's going on in their life that we know about and we're concerned.
Yeah, this generation of kids are just now starting to enter the workforce, and they're doing a lot of studies now, and they're showing that about 39% of Gen Z workers will actually be more productive if their employer or their peers check in on them and just give them that positive feedback. It really made me think like I'm nothing against any admin that might be in the room, but sometimes our admin can be isolated and in silos. And how often are they reaching out to us to check in on us, to give us those personal just recognitions of what we're doing? Laura, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
And I guess a couple of things. I think in the beginning, I did not intentionally set aside one-on time with kids, but they have found it. They've sought it out. They have my phone number. We have the inbox. They reach out to me. I have not been good about setting personal boundaries.
Right.
I get text messages, phone calls at all hours of the day. But I take advantage of those moments. I also start my Zoom meetings about 5 minutes early, and there's always a few kids that'll show up, and then we just have time to sit and chat. The kids have been asking me to allow them to create servers to play different games together, and so I'll allow them to put that server code in the chat so that they can meet up with each other. I've just recently downloaded Among Us, and I'm learning to play, so I can play with them some evenings. Begging for that. but they're really, they're really, you can tell how needy they are, and they're just craving that attention. And I'm doing everything I can to just try to provide that. And you talked about administrators not checking in on us, and something, I've got a new administrator this year, and it's pretty neat. She does a little thing where she sends out these to a text to all of us. It's got different colored hearts that represent how you're feeling. And every Friday, everyone has to send your color heart. And if your color heart is, I don't remember the colors right now, but if they're in the I'm struggling area, then she makes a personal phone call to you that weekend just to check with you to see how you're doing. So
that's wonderful. Anybody else? Ideas, thoughts that you're doing? What about to create conversation? Yes, Ashley, go. Aw, sadness. I can't hear you. There you go.
Unmute myself on my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you got fancy muting.
Yeah. All right. So one thing we have been doing is creating clubs during lunchtime, especially on Mondays during our all asynchronous day. So students go to podcasting club, gaming club, and that's really built them to feel comfortable taking their screen off and showing their faces. So they're learning to see who they're talking to. And that's translating into the classroom, because then we're actually having productive work time versus just staring to a black screen. That's been super helpful. I've been helping teachers facilitate those clubs and kind of guiding them and running those for them.
That's awesome. So that's creating more experiences for kids to have positive relationships with each other. And then is anybody having anything where ways that you're reaching out and connecting with parents to build? Because I feel like in this world in which we're all virtual, this is kind of that one time, before I'll speak from a dad perspective, like I was observing my daughters and how they were learning. But now I feel like I'm a silent fly on the wall and I can see everything that they're submitting and doing. Is there ideas and thoughts and conversations you're having with families?
One thing I was just thinking about, and this came from something earlier in VSTE, is doing like coffee and conversation, maybe in the evening, with inviting parents to come see if they want to talk about digital citizenship. And another thing that's been done before virtual and now is a video newsletter created by students sent out per class for the teachers or for the parents to see what the students are doing.
Yeah, that's really good. Laura, you unmuted. What's up?
Yeah. I'm having parent Zoom check-ins about once every 3 weeks. So the parents come to a Zoom meeting in the evening, and I just answer any questions, clarify things, have kind of taught them how to use Canvas so they can help their kids. Also during that time, I noticed this black screen thing drives people crazy, especially me. I want to be able to see my students. Otherwise, I feel like I don't know them. So during my very first Zoom meeting with parents, I told the parents that I can't require your child to have their video on. I said, however, if your child doesn't have their video on, I don't know them. I can't see the expression on their face. I can't see if they're excited. I can't see if they look frustrated. So I strongly encouraged parents to require it. And pretty much I've had perfect attendance for the entire year for all my Zooms with my class, and all but 1 or 2 kids has their video on the entire time. So that has been very helpful, because I think seeing people helps build relationships. I think I would be depressed and suicidal if I was staring at black boxes all day.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if any of you guys want to nerd about evolutionary psychology and social psychology, but Robin Dunbar does some wonderful videos and TED Talks, and he doesn't really do anything. He's kind of a super nerd, but he talks a lot about how in order that we have circles of relationships, and we have 5 people that we're really close to, and we have 15 people that are friends, and then we have 50 people that we can hang out with. But then there's this next circle, and I feel that's where we as educators fit in. For our students, they have a circle of 150 people that are meaningful in their lives right now. So the next circle is around 500, and that's about how many faces you can remember. I'm sorry, names you can remember. And then the next circle is 1,500, which is how many faces you can remember. But it always makes me wonder, like, how can I be so integral into a kid's life that I'm one of the 150 people that matter? And it's kind of weird because, like, in a high school, the average class is about 30 kids. They take about 7 classes. And if you think about it, kids group themselves in these little circles. So any ideas and ways that you're allowing kids to have voice online. So like it's more than just the completion of the task, but the learning is actually connecting to the world, ideas, things that you're doing with your students that is allowing them to have that voice online. This is like that moment where like people are not sure if somebody else is going to talk. So this is where I just roll up the music a little bit.
My French teacher does a lot of activities that involve like Flipgrid and some tools where she gives them certain topics or allows them to choose certain topics of their interest that they could speak about. And I think that's one way that she's giving them the voice and choice to be heard. Well, no matter what the topic is, pretty much.
Yeah. What would be the professional version of Flipgrid? Like Flipgrid is in school, but kids wouldn't use Flipgrid outside of school. What would they use?
Well, they could use their own phone.
Right.
And they also have WeVideo that they have access to. There's just so many different tools. Outside of school, they're using Snapchat with their friends. They're using Instagram and Twitter. So there's all kinds of resources that the kids do have if they want their voice to be heard as well.
I remember last year back in real life, I go into every 9th and 10th grade classroom and have conversations with them. And I remember with my 9th graders, I was like, all right, guys, I want you to make a video on, and one of the options was to make a video on Flipgrid. And the students were like, Mr. Watts, nobody really wants to use Flipgrid, but I'll put it on my TikTok for you. And I was like, you do you, kid. But if that's something that you'd want. But it was interesting because they were being vulnerable and promoting themselves to the world. And they would rather do that almost than do it on Flipgrid. Other ideas, thoughts, things that we're doing, Socratic seminars I see in the chat, things that we're doing to connect the classroom and have it have application in the world today. No? Okay. Other thoughts, questions, things that you feel like is missing, like in 2020 or in 2021 when life comes back to normal, what do you feel is the conversation that we need to have with our kids, the conversation we need to have with our teachers or with our parents?
I think it would be cool to make sure that we could continue having our parents as involved as they are. I think that's one of the biggest keys that we've had all along is those parents that are helping their kids at home are extending what we can do for them. And if we could continue to loop them in or have them want to be looped in, I think that would be huge moving forward.
Yeah, very much. Anybody else? Things that you want to do. I mean, I love that bringing David to loop the parents in. Somebody said something about coffee with parents, and it makes me want to start something on the weekends because sometimes that's the time when parents are available. Other things, like what's the next steps with digital citizenship? What's the next steps with our teachers? What's the next steps with our students? What are we trying to take them to?
I think maybe getting the teachers to remember that we need to meet the kids where they are with technology, that we can't go back to old ways. Yeah. We have to keep up what we're doing. That even if you're in a division, which I'm in Virginia Beach, so we have a lot of technology, but hey, teachers, now you have the skills.
Yeah.
So you need to continue with them and learn to integrate those skills in so you have greater engagement from your students if you didn't have it already.
Yeah, I love that very much.
My librarians do an advisory with the students in the different grade levels that talk about the digital citizenship. Mm-hmm. And they have different lessons that we're doing during advisory with the mm-hmm. students, so that we don't lose touch with, just because they have a device,
Yeah.
There's still things that they need to be exposed to and to remember as we're in this virtual environment.
I think one of the things that our school has experienced, we are piloting for the county a new LMS this year, which it's hard to do that in any year, but everything is new, starting from scratch all the way down to our LMS, and we're still figuring things out. But I think it gave us an advantage in a way, in that we were able to build this virtual environment from the ground up. And there are a lot of organizational elements that we've learned this year that I think we can use to build in our LMS in a regular year that we wouldn't normally have tried to do, to build that out as more of a learning environment rather than just that place to post assignments for the kids that were absent. So I think this is really helping to make it more organizational. I think it's also going to help students figure out, all right, they're middle school kids, so their organization isn't great to begin with.
Right.
Helping them with those executive functioning skills that they're going to need in a digital world. How do I organize what my Google Drive looks like? How do I find the files that I need? How do I make sure that I can access my life when everything's on the computer? So I think a lot of that really, we were forced to do it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we can go once all of the other stressors are taken off and we can really flourish with what we've started.
100%. That makes me excited. Katie, you unmuted, so.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what's the next step of digital citizenship? And I think, our students are getting a lot of practice at that now. And I think maybe taking it to the next level of digital advocacy, where they're actually trying to, get people on board for an idea with all the social things going on, especially right now in America. I think it's a great time for students to learn to be advocates for what they believe in.
Yeah. I mean, every kid has a voice, and I think being completely online and being virtual and starting this year, it's amplified that voice for our students. So one of the things that I'll end with this, one of the things that I've always been wanting to try to get happening is, I feel like in the state of Virginia, we can have a statewide approach to how we are bringing digital citizenship, not only just into the lessons, but into our homes with our families, into our administration meetings, and talking about the boundaries that we need our teachers to set with their students, and their students need to set with their teachers. So I'd love to join the conversation with you. I'll put again, if you want to add comments, and I'll put it in the chat here. You can add, that's a little Padlet where you can add your ideas. If for some silly reason you wanted to watch me get super nerdy and passionate about things, you could watch me talk for 24 minutes. Yeah, I can really go on tangents, so it's maybe better to listen. And then if you want to follow me on Twitter and just have a conversation, I'm sometimes really bad about replying, or actually, no, I'm decent about replying. I don't know, Katie, I'm kind of good about replying. It's the posting part that's a struggle for me, but I would love to partner up and connect with anybody in the state about trying to bring digital citizenship with a more statewide focus.
Hey, thanks, William. Thank you, everybody. Also, I want to remind you that we are running this whole Discord thing as a background chat between now and Sunday and afterwards. And it'd be really great to have those links posted in there.
Yep.
And it'd be a great place to continue on the conversation. And this is a wonderful thing to bring before us. Thank you for being so passionate about it. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and maybe see you at a 7 o'clock session.
Woo, 7 o'clock. All right. Thank you, everybody.